Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Omnia Performance Podcast with myself, Fergus Crawley, and
myself, Big Jonny Payne.
Big Jonny Payne. Today, we are going to discuss essentially how important your reason why is, and ultimately against the background of some trends and patterns we are seeing in our space, I guess. Really important to reinforce how ego will only get you so far, and I think it is really important to connect with the reason why you are doing the things that you are doing, why you're setting the goals that you're setting, and reflecting on those so that the self-development that comes from training, big, hairy, scary goals, goes just beyond performance metrics and how many miles you've done on your alpha flies. So, Jonny,
You can ask me to do something in 10 words or less.
I was going to say 3 sentences. You just give me your reason why as concisely as you can for training. Keep it simple. Elevator pitch. What's your reason why?
My reason why, the reason I train, we've discussed plenty of times before actually, is that I enjoy the challenge of finding where my personal limits are and in the gym, the mini challenges of that provides. I think it's a personal challenge, it's a personal journey, and it teaches me over and over about myself and about who I am as an individual. So it's a conduit to self-discovery and self-development.
That was concise. Well done. My reason why is that having had a negative experience and negative relationship with my own well-being in the past, I view training as one of the biggest and most important anchors to keep me moving forwards in every element of my life. Training is one of sort of 3 pillars that I hold myself accountable to, the 3 being training, personal life, and professional life, I guess. And if all 3 aren't sort of ticking over nicely, or one is maybe dropping or falling down, the other 2 come with it. So it's very important for me to keep on top of all of those things, because my reason why is that self-development and forward motion comes from a foundation of intimidating training goals, because the process of getting to the start line of an intimidating event, in my opinion, is more valuable than getting to the finish line, as the lessons you learn along the way, the things you're exposed to along the way, are where the value really lies.
Yeah, there's so many parts to training that speak to life that it's difficult to kind of separate them all and not say that it's a proxy for things that may or may not be in your control. So you've framed your training around, you trained before this, to be fair, but since then you've really framed training around a kind of a reflective and positive study on mental health, on your self-control and kind of your control of your own development, haven't you? So
yeah.
But within training itself...
But I think it's important to mention, because this is often misconstrued online. I've seen it in Reddit threads. I don't feel dependent on training for... I don't feel a dependency for these. If I'm not doing big, massive goals, then I'm going to fall apart.
Exactly. So
which I have seen people misinterpret things as online before.
Yeah, that's really what I was aiming at, was to kind of make sure that element was framed, because what you're not saying is that if you were not to train specifically, if I don't have these big, hairy, scary goals, if I don't have, a daily max to push for, then who am I? I'm useless. I'm rubbish. It's a framework for self-reflection. Like I say, and I think we're probably looking at the same things, you and I, or we know we are. And that's an interesting thing, isn't it? Because what you're doing is there's also an element of training that is pure enjoyment, correct?
Yeah.
You're just having fun.
Yeah.
And that's vital, because then what you're able to do is you're to take those, experiences of fun and those kind of enjoyable moments, and actually then put them to purpose, put them to use. And that's what I find really exciting about it, is even in the gym, even racking a weight and saying, today I'm going to get X amount of reps out of this, and that will represent the linear growth that I'm looking for, and you get to kind of 3 reps away from the target rep range, and you start to think, Jesus, I'm not sure if I can make this. And then you do. Then I've got 2 more sets. Have I got it in me today? Yes, I have, because I am Big Jonny Payne or whatever. Oh. Yeah, and you go through that kind of process, and you come out of it at the other side, riddled with sort of endorphin release and all these things that you can chase down with external things like drugs or validation from others or whatever it might be. It's yours, you own it. You were able to kind of it's almost kind of perpetual motion, isn't it? You're able to produce your own happiness just from your interaction with yourself and your environment. And I think in of itself, that is beautiful. And then you can frame bigger goals there. Like I said, as we kicked off, I like to then look at how far can I push this? What is my capability? Where's my mental resolve going to get me? If I look at something, and you mentioned the process earlier on, that's huge in terms of the outcome that I know I can't do now. How long would it take me to get there? And can I last the course of even training to get to that point? Or am I going to talk myself out of the end? You know, all that is positively, what's the word I'm looking for now? It's all positive anyway, isn't it? It's all something that leads you to an end goal that actually is self-development. And the good thing I think about it, one of the good things is that it's not something that's going to last forever. You can hit that big goal, and a bit like like having a baby. I've never had one, but I'm led to believe that if you have a baby, it's very painful.
I have heard.
I have heard too, but it doesn't stop people having more babies, does it? So you get through that pain and suffering and fear and all the rest of it. Something absolutely marvelous and wonderful happens, and then you forget about all the pain and things. Let's do it again. It's wild. Although clearly I'm not trying to kind of suggest that they're the same thing. There is something similar in that kind of, now it disintegrates, now we reset, now do we go again? Can I go again? Have I got the mental resolve? So it's constant, perpetual kind of cycle of self-discovery. And I've found no better means of playing that game than playing this game.
Good way of looking at it. I think the thing that we could easily fall into the trap of here is making it see, well, we're very fortunate to have our reason why. And that's come through, I mean, you've got years on me, but you've got through many iterations of Big Johnny Pin, and I've gone through many iterations of Fergus at this point. And I think whilst I've kind of been almost forced through higher pressure circumstances in life where I found myself in a bad place mentally that's kind of forced a change, you don't need to be in that position where change is forced. I think what we see one of the biggest values of training across varied disciplines specifically being, especially as you've got a bit of a training history or sporting history behind you, is letting curiosity be your guiding principle, whereby you are open to new ideas, open to new things. It's like moving to a new city. If you go from rural Lancashire to London, London's a very, very exciting place. You'll try new cuisines, you'll meet new people. It'll be much more multicultural, I can tell you that for free. I mean, I don't know about certain parts of rural Lancashire, but you go to London and there's different pockets and different areas. Just so much going on. The food, the personalities, the groupings, the bars, the things that are going on. It's just loads. It's amazing. And I think that's what I actually miss most about being in London, is just the eclectic nature of the people and the melting pot it becomes. Whereas Edinburgh's not necessarily as much like that. Well, nowhere else in the UK really is. But I think that's the same frame of reference as training, whereby if you find yourself in this slow, binary, monostructural existence where you just keep doing things because those are the things that you do, like I was with powerlifting, then it's difficult to realise that there's this melting pot out there. I think the only way you can do that is by abandoning the ego and be willing to be a student, to expose yourself to new demands. And that's hard to do, again, speaking from experience. But if you accept that, if you don't know what your reason why is, and you train because you feel that you want to be in shape, just because you feel that that's something you have to do, or you're training to impress other people, you're training to tick certain boxes, or maybe you do have an emotional dependency on it. If there's reasons that aren't intrinsically exciting and curiosity driven, then I think, without wanting to prescribe or be ignorant to people's circumstances, it's encourage curiosity to lead what you do next, because that can open up doors that, I mean, you might try something and hate it. You might try something and love it. Yeah. You might try something and think, you know what, I'm going to balance this alongside X, Y, Z. And ego will get you so far in this game. It'll get you through a high rocks. It'll get you through a marathon. Probably get you through a 70.3. But I don't think you can ego your way through a full Ironman prep or a 100-miler prep, because there will be a day where you wake up and you've got those big sessions that are required. And if it's not deep within you, something that you're excited about, you're not going to do the work required. And that's where the process over the destination is more important.
Yeah, you possibly can. And that's an interesting nuance, though. I think you're right to bring that up. Peer pressure could get you through these things. But
can it? Amidst the busyness of day-to-day life?
Yeah, it certainly can. But The problem is that once you get through it, what do you get from it? You know that you tick that particular box, but it wasn't even a box that was something you wanted to tick. You could try to find a way to frame this without being too kind of offensive about it or anything. But well, that's not really necessary. If we get to the end of a 70.3 or even a full Ironman prep and you got through the thing, but you hated every minute of it, the likelihood is that you're going to switch off. So I guess the analogy that would be useful here would be, yeah, we can lose fucking 8 kilos of weight on a restrictive Atkins diet. But if you hated every minute of that diet and you managed to get to the end of it and you see your abs for a week and then you think, well, my life's horrible. I didn't enjoy any of the last 8 months of that or however long it took. I'm going to return to things that I do love, which might well be cake, or Guinness, if we're looking directly at me, and what is the value in that? Well, I'm happier this way, and then you get 13 kilos comes back on, and then you're in this kind of negative spiral of now dieting's a load of shit, and now and you develop a very negative relationship with those kind of things. And I think the same kind of applies with somebody who can be peer pressured or socially pressured, or their own compass is off, and they feel like they want to do this thing, then realize a little bit further down the line that they weren't doing it for the right reasons. Chances are they're going to switch off to it altogether, and then they lose the opportunity. And like you said a minute ago, we can't prescribe why people train. We certainly don't want to, but we certainly do. A phrase I use often is that we're in the business of facilitating joy for others. That's what we do as coaches. We offer you the opportunity to use our guidance to chase down the goals which bring you joy. Now, if the goal's not bringing you joy, it's just bringing you validation with your mates who really clearly don't know a lot about you anyway, then ultimately at some point you're going to hate that goal. You may get through it, but then you're going to look back on it and not even have gotten what you might have gotten out of it. In which case, what are you doing it for? Don't train.
Or train, or allocate the time and
find
allocate
what
it
it is
elsewhere.
about training that you may have liked. Find whether or not there is a why in there that's different to the why that you're professing or that you believe. Don't pull the wool over your own eyes, etc., etc. Because I do think that whilst that sounds like we're then saying, no, you should only train for these reasons, it's not. But what I would want to say to people is, don't train for the wrong reasons, because it's gonna create a negative feedback loop. And that negative feedback loop is going to lose you at some point. And it could be really quite negative. It could be quite damaging. It could be damaging to all the things that you had got in that pot in the first place, which could be...
it means that...
could be your sense of self, could be your identity.
The top of the mountain you're climbing...
I don't even like running.
Yeah. The top of the mountain you're climbing is going to be a very disappointing peak when you get there. Yeah. Which means that the coming down the other side is going to be a bit... Oh, fuck, this isn't what I expected.
If you go to the top of the mountain because you think that your mates are going to like you for it, then at the top of the mountain, you're only going to think, what do my mates think of me? And you're not looking at the view. You're not there. You don't experience what it was. So what we're hoping, one of the things I would hope out of this kind of conversation, if people are listening in, is that we can kind of encourage you at least to look at your why deeply and find a why that has a positive end to it, or a why that really feeds something that is cyclically positive.
I think that the way I encourage people to view it, generally speaking, and again, purely through my own frame of reference, is I think your why is best underpinned by what the action makes you on a day-to-day basis rather than what you hope the outcome on the other side is. In the sense that I've often found it quite strange and confusing how melancholic and calm and unenthused I am crossing finish lines at big events or getting to the end of something. Yeah. Because ultimately that's just kind of the last piece of the puzzle. The puzzle is the work. Yeah, the puzzle is the challenge.
It's such a cliche and such a trite sounding statement, but the journey is the...
It is. We could regurgitate many quotes here, but I think
super stoic or Catholic or whatever about it, but it's the journey that counts, and it really is.
Process over outcome is a more sustainable way of viewing your training goals, and I think is one that gives you a healthier relationship with you understanding why you do the things, why you want to do the things that you do, why you are driven to do the things that you do. Because if you're doing X, Y, and Z for social media following, if you're doing X, Y, and Z to try and get laid, if you're doing X, Y, and Z because you think it's going to make people like you more, if you're doing X, Y, and Z to prove to that person that you are who you said you were going to be or any of this, then you're going to realize that, well, in my opinion anyway, I don't think, generally speaking, whilst there can be a huge amount of reward in those processes because you can build the habits and get the momentum going, I don't think that that's the healthiest relationship with what should be a very fruitful process, which is essentially adult PE.
Yeah, adult PE is good. A good example that comes to mind is I used to work with a girl who was a little bit lost in life and was keen to find something. This is before I met her. Keen to find something that gave her some sense of who she was. Right? Found weightlifting. Found powerlifting actually, and then discovered weightlifting, but fell really hard down a rabbit hole of that was who she was. She was a weightlifter. And in amongst being a weightlifter, got very involved in social media, needed the validation of social media. If she didn't get enough likes on weightlifting posts, it was a very, very negative feeling that she got from that. If she didn't get the numbers in the gym that she wanted in terms of training, it's a very, very negative environment for her to be in, and for anybody else to be in fact. And the whole thing became this kind of cascade of self-validation based on this notion that she was a weightlifter. That was it. If she wasn't a weightlifter, what was she? She'd attached every sense of self to this external. It was other people were looking in that she needed to look in. This external validation that she was a weightlifter. And every session she would have, she'd hated it. And it was so hard for me to see because she was very talented, very good at it, and very dedicated to it, because if she wasn't, she'd lose who she was altogether. So it was a very hard journey for me to keep saying, do you really need to weightlift? Because what you're saying is, do you need to be you to this? Because that's what she's hearing. And slowly became ill. I'm super excited to have found, for her to have hit kind of rock bottom, and that wasn't super exciting, but then eventually found training again, had to walk away from it altogether at high level, and eventually found training again. Now very much excited about the idea of being hybrid, solely on the things that you've just been saying, is that she suddenly discovered that running might be fun. And through running being fun, she discovered the mountains around her. I'd like to go up one of them, never been up one of them before. And now she's fully immersed in outdoors movement and enjoying movement, the feedback that she gets physically from just simple movement. And I asked her recently, do you still weight train? She says, yeah, I love it. I don't see you on Instagram anymore. I don't care what anybody thinks anymore. I just love how it feels. And mate, it broke my heart in a really positive way. It was like, oh, fuck, to hear that, to hear that she's found training again, found the conduit of, now it's about self-belief. Now it's about the opportunity to, as you said, the curiosity, the opportunity to discover new things and to say, oh, I can run. I'm not just a weightlifter, all this kind of stuff that kind of speaks to our hybrid mindset. But she fell hard, and it was a case of, it was so hard to see it happening. And my fear is that people are doing this a lot. I see it a lot more on social media now, that people run in order to be seen to be running. I know it is a kind of bit tongue-in-cheek, but the whole, you got to wear these trainers, otherwise you're not running properly. You got to wear this particular tracksuit, or you're not running properly. Or you've got to be seen to have this particular kind of social media output, or it's, why would you do it? And you kind of think, yeah, I get what being sexy is, and I get what being cool is. I'm very cool. Everybody knows that.
But not sexy.
But not sexy.
I know you. Yeah,
far too old for that. But I get all that kind of stuff. I understand, and there's something good about that. There's something self-reflective in that. There's this kind of sense of self. You should have a kind of a good awareness of self. But if you fall into that kind of, it's not quite narcissism, is it? But it's a kind of an ego drift that takes you so far from who you are that you're bound to lose yourself. And like I said, I've seen it. That's just one example. I've seen it many times. I get kind of scared when I see these kind of, does show my age, because I think of kids kind of going out there and running for the sake of being seen in the right shoes. And you're kind of like, well, yeah, running's great. The shoes look cool. But what's going to happen when your shoes, what happens if you lose your shoes one day? You're going to never run again. You're going to, do you know what I mean? It's like you've missed the point, and at some point that could get really negative. Let's bring it back to joy. Let's bring it back to self-discovery. Let's bring it back to curiosity. Let's bring it back to sport is about positive things, as opposed to, it's about validation, likes, followings, and this stuff that maybe generationally
they're not. I think it's important. They're not opposed.
They're not opposed.
They're not like inherently opposed. But it's the essentially my view on things is I let curiosity drive my training goals, and I ultimately won't train for something that doesn't get me excited about training. Hence why I've not done a high rocks, because it's just a threshold test that I'm kind of not that excited about.
Music analogy for you, running.
You've got a music analogy. Okay, sit on that for a while, because you need
seem
to.
excited to spell it.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear it. I'm always excited, but yeah, that's the example I'm always asked most on. Or why have you never given CrossFit a go? I don't know. I, for whatever reason, I'm drawn to single discipline training separately. Yeah. Maybe it's simplicity. Maybe I'm drawn to simplicity. Maybe that's what it is.
You get to experience the thing.
Yeah, and I think feeding off what you said, it's trying to make a non-competitive environment competitive is only going to have downstream negative effects for those that aren't there to be competitive. Yeah. And I think that's where, like you've said, it's. I mean, Mark Beaumont was on the Modern Mind podcast, and I think verbatim it was something along the lines of, people are focusing too much on building a brand before they've actually done anything.
Yeah, God. That's a good way to kind of encapsulate what I'm trying to say.
His example was that he's had so many people come to him over the years saying like, oh, I've been doing this, and this, and now I'm going to cycle the world, but I'm struggling to get this, and I'm struggling to get this. And they couldn't see the connection, that the reason they were struggling to tick the boxes that Mark had ticked off, cycling around the world twice in the past, was because they hadn't built the CV of requirements to give the verifiability that essentially we have faith and trust in you, that one, you're doing this for the right reasons.
You're not gonna get that ticket without experience. What's Gaz's thing? Experience is experiences times 1,000. You know, I love the quote. And
I'm not going to sit and argue with Mark Beaumont on what the merits of building a brand around a sport are, because I mean he's an OG.
He's Mark Beaumont,
and he's
and he's
arguably one of the best endurance cyclists, ultra endurance cyclists ever to have existed.
Yeah.
I don't know if his North Coast 500 record was beaten, but somebody did try and beat it recently. I think they fell short, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, that really struck me, because it feels very topical, and I think there were people listening thinking, Fergus, this is your world. What the fuck are you talking about? But it's our world. But I put a lot of my training up on YouTube, but you see it day to day. A lot of the time, I resent putting my training up on YouTube, because putting stuff up on YouTube gets in the way of my fucking training.
Well, it's the same as me, mate. If you look at it from my perspective, I see coaches on YouTube and coaches on Instagram talking about things they know 2 years wet as coaches. Like, well, you don't know anything.
Yeah, but you're just an old grumpy bastard.
I could be an old grumpy bastard about it, but I've done my time, and I've had the experiences, and I can tell you we've seen this go around the wheel 3-4 times. You know, you still got to do the basics, you still got to do the functional stuff.
I think this is where the arguments and the back and forth over which label's best, which this is best, our box is best, fuck runners, haha, why be average at 3 things as a triathlete when you can be like me and average at 1?
My thing labelled as about 6 different things in my career. I like the label hybrid. We're sort of digressing subject-wise here, because it encapsulates a kind of a methodological approach and an understanding of what it is that I think we can achieve. But it's just a label. We're still at the end of it. We're still right back to that, trying to facilitate joy, including our own. The music analogy, you want to hear it?
Yeah, sorry.
It's what it feels like when I look on and see this kind of thing is the same as being fully immersed in music. I love music, as anybody who follows this stuff, and as you know. And then having Simon Cowell's latest project hit #1. You're like, hold on. All right, it looks like music, it sounds like music, but it's been produced out of a kind of a painting by numbers box, to mix my analogies. It might be a bit like music, but it's got no soul, it's got no heart, and you're missing the point.
You are a grumpy old bastard.
Getting to #1 isn't the point of music. That's the point that people now think, or people, a certain section of music think is important. So A&R men and promotional men and men like Simon Cowell, God bless him, they have made music seem like the point is to get famous and the point is get to #1. But the point of music is not that at all. And I don't think anybody can argue about the real beauty of music. I guess another analogy, taking it away from music, would be the dilution of people's interpretation of love through things like reality TV shows. Oh, this is love. It is about likes, it's about following, it's about superficial arrangements, it's about who's the prettiest in the room. You're like, no, you're missing the point. That's how to sell a TV program. That's not about love. So bringing it back to our game, wearing the latest trainers, making sure you're seen to do this particular race at this particular time in these particular shorts, with this particular gang, using this particular supplement, misses the wood for the trees altogether. You're no longer enjoying training for training's sake. You're now enjoying training to get the #1 slot, to sell the bloody album, to do, and it's gone. It's heartless and soulless. And I think, although that is a curmudgeonly old bastard talking, it's also the opportunity for experience to look on and go, oh dear. It looks like what you think it looks like, but it isn't it. And you're missing the beauty of what it really is. And that's what I think we have the opportunity, hopefully, to do with what we're doing, is to say, no. Listen to this song from Marvin Gaye. It's fucking brilliant. You know, who's that? Is he part of the... Shut up.
I think the key...
I've stretched it too far, but I'm sure you get my point.
Your cynicism, I think it's important to underline with that if the things that you've referenced...
I don't think that's cynicism. I think
if it provides an entry point for people, it's a positive. But if it becomes all-consuming and identity associated, that's where
if you're now only trying to make sure that your album stays at #1 and you're only trying to...
Well, but Lewis Capaldi said it better. He well, I mean, God bless him. It just seems like he is the most charismatic, phenomenal musician, commercially an absolute weapon, will do anything, self-deprecating, hilariously Scottish, so overwhelmingly positive in many ways. But he had crippling anxiety at the thought of the fact that he could not produce his second album effectively because of the fear that it would not be as successful as the first.
Yeah.
Because, well, I've got to the top of the hill. Like, what am I going to do? Jump a little bit higher for half a second?
Yeah.
Like if I'd put all this work into this and only get 3/4 the way up the hill, then I'm going to feel like a failure, even though you've reached more people.
Guarantee you speak to him directly, and we've heard interviews. Great example. He would then say, what's happening is I'm losing the beauty of music. I'm losing the opportunity to make songs because I love them. I'm losing the opportunity to write the music that's in my heart. Now I feel compelled to write the music that meets the commercial demand that I've set. I've set a bar here that's commercially driven, and now I'm scared that I don't meet that again. So he's lost, in that moment, loses the beauty of his music, and he'll most likely tell you the same himself. And then when success comes back, it's because he found how to make music from his heart and his soul again. A good artist would be thinking that way. The same applies to this stuff. If you lose yourself in the idea that you said it yourself about goals, and well, if I do a 3:30 marathon, I'm going to have to do a 3:15 marathon. For fuck's sake, right back to the beginning again. Well, why do you? I mean, are you enjoying it anymore? Do you love weightlifting anymore? If the answer is no, find something else that you do love. It might not even be training, but for God's sake, don't go out training because you think if you don't, you won't get the validation and likes because of the trainers you didn't wear, etc., etc. You've missed the point.
The thing that frustrates me the most, whether it's comments, threads, whether it's other things, I don't know, is that there seems to be this real trend for those that are good at what they do, but not as good as they'd like to be, and not the best, to viciously look down on those that are worse than them. And I think that's where the premise of why that person is as good at the thing that they are good at in the first place is lost, because at one point they were a noob. They were a student and they had to work hard to get to that point. And it's a privilege for somebody, quote unquote, in terms of performance metrics beneath them, but in no way as a human being or as a runner or as a triathlete, as a person beneath them, important to really flag against them, is that they're in the... It's like if you that feeling when you finish Breaking Bad, or you finish Game of Thrones had the chance but cocked it up. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, you finish it and you think, oh wow, I am gutted that the enjoyment and the anticipation I've been experiencing is now over. If you're then bitter and look down on people that haven't yet had the joy of experiencing the thing that you had the joy of experiencing, and you instead I haven't seen Game of Thrones, stupid prick. What's this about? Like, well, what are you gaining from that? And what are they gaining from that? Wouldn't you say, look, I really enjoyed this, therefore I recommend that there's something you should maybe consider. Oh, how are you getting on? Oh, I'm excited. Oh, what point are you out? Oh, wow, you've got from a 25-minute 5K to a 24-minute 5K. Right? 24-minute 5K, you're basically walking, mate. There's loads of this shit. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about, you arrogant bastard?
Yeah,
but the problem is those people are framing themselves against people that are running 12-minute 5Ks. And they're running 14, 15, absolutely rapid in no uncertain terms. But it's just, people do things for different reasons. And that is the beauty of why people do things. Yeah. Performance metrics do not define a person, and I feel like
A good nutritionist.
It's become difficult to wade through that, especially for people that are looking to get into new things, potentially as a reason to better connect with their reason why they want to do things.
Yeah. A good friend of mine, nutritionist out in America, used to say, "Don't yuck my yum."
Don't yuck my yum.
Don't yuck my yum. I really quite like it because it kind of it's something that you can speak to other
Like,
things.
don't spit in my food.
Like
essentially.
if you're sitting eating a steak and I don't like steak, I'm not going to lean over and go, "Oh my God, steak! That looks disgusting. Why would you even eat that? Because you're going to ruin someone's meal, and you clearly like it, and it's not bothering me if you eat it." But people do that, don't they? They go, "Oh,
I do that with sambuca.
What kind of a disgusting thing is that to put in your body?"
If somebody says I'm going to have a sambuca, I'll immediately repulse. That's the doorbell.
That's the doorbell.
Repulsed at your discussion.
But then, if you frame it back in what you were saying, "Don't yuck my yum" is like, listen, you've got. I'm aiming for my first sub 25 minute 5K. Sub 25 minute. I can do an 18. You pussy.
There's a lot.
You just yucked somebody's yum horrendously. You are a prick.
Rather than saying, "Oh, that's
You're not Kipchoge. Shut up and sit down."
No, I like that, and I feel like we're falling into a trap of just getting irritated again. But
it's easily done.
It is easily done.
The summary for me, and then I'll let you summarize the whole podcast because you are much better at that. Is that whole thing, that the whole sort of make sure that you're doing it for the reasons that. For positive reasons that you have searched your soul and your heart a little bit to find out whether those reasons are legitimately connected to your and the people around you's positive outcome, and then lean into it and really enjoy it. I guess if people are super, super competitive and you have go for it as hard as you can, but make sure you're still enjoying that. Once you hate competition, walk away from it. So it's surely got to be about the love of the thing. So I'll say once again, our job is always to facilitate joy. That's why I do what I do, and it's why I enjoy what I'm doing. But if I'm facilitating somebody's negative validation needs and they're not actually enjoying training, they're enjoying it for the wrong reasons, and it's become kind of a negative spiral, then I would hope to be able to have the conversation, have that person kind of move away from that and find the joy either back in training, I would love that for them, or somewhere else. So yeah, find your why, and make sure it really truly is your why, and then go after it 100% with everything you've got. But if you're working against yourself, recognize that early, because otherwise that can be very, very quickly self-destructive, and it doesn't need to happen.
Ego can be the fuel, but not the engine, is the way I'd summarize things. And whilst I'm conscious, we've given some specific examples and probably got a little bit irritated at certain categories of things along the way. That all comes from the point of view of seeing a huge amount of value in progress for individuals, and it's not up to any other individuals to determine what progress looks like for the other person, unless they are essentially paying that person as a coach to give them accountability to do exactly that. But I think, ego is the fuel that can keep the engine moving forwards, but does not replace the engine itself. The engine needs to be your reason why, and that is something that will adapt, need mechanical intervention, and be reflected upon as time goes on. Because, I mean, for me, it's evolved over the years. It kind of swings a little bit year to year from ultra endurance to strength or speed work based on how I feel. And I, even still being hyper aware of this, find myself wrestling against, you are a triathlete, you need to be swimming 3 times a week. I've only swam twice this week. You're a lazy bastard. All these things. But the more iterations of that I go through, and the more honest conversations I have with myself about my reason why, where I challenge my ego and my identity relationship with it, the happier and more fruitful my day-to-day training can be, so that it's giving, not taking. Because there's a lot of chaos in the world. So training should be fruitful, not...
Should be, mate. It should be about love. It should be about fulfillment. It should be about the opportunity to better yourself, for yourself and for those around you. And it's such a great conduit for that. It's such a great tool for that, for self-discovery, self-reflection, all the things that we said at the very beginning. Something popped into my head there. We can cut it if you want. It's a bit weird, but a good friend of mine, Will, an extraordinary jiu-jitsu coach, very, very intelligent guy as well. We were having a conversation one time at the bar, in fact, about, I think I wanted to talk about the differences between what we did as coaches and maybe, what can we learn from each other? Tell me something about what you do that might help me, and vice versa. This was the conversation I thought we were having. And he said, well, we do the same thing, Johnny. I said, well, we don't. You coach jiu-jitsu and I'm a strength and conditioning coach. It's coaching, sure, but it's different. It's different. He says, no. We don't coach anything. We just sell love. It was mad. We were quite drunk. But what he was saying was, all we're doing is this facilitation of joy. We're just selling love. We're selling people's opportunity to fall in love with something, fall in love with their interpretation of themselves in a positive way, and then to be useful from a loving perspective to those around them. And all that is you're helping them grow. So if the whole thing's not helping you grow in some way or another, if it's actually stunting your growth, let's recognize that, because that's not the way forward. Fergus, we sell love.
Jonny, the gardener. You're a watering can. You're cultivating an allotment of love.
I am.
Wow.
I am.
That was a profound way to finish, Jonny. Too many analogies today.
Yeah, well, there's
Too many
There's
analogies.
never too many analogies.
There are. There can be. There can be.
The problem is when I try and string 18 of them together.
Yeah.
What are
Well,
we talking about?
it's a meta analogy. Anyway, that is that. Hope you enjoyed that. These podcasts are becoming quite conversational and just more back and forth discussions between the pair of us. So if you do enjoy this format, please let us know. Conscious that we're sort of pushing against a few things that we see as counterintuitive within the space in which we operate, and whilst we very much try and stay in our own lane, I think it's important. The point we always want to hammer home, and whenever we're sort of working against the grain a little bit, it's so that we can try and encourage you, the listener, or friends of the listener, or potential listeners, to not be afraid to do things for the reasons that you want to do them, rather than the reasons that other people make you feel that you should, or to make the standards accessible enough so that you feel that you can, rather than that you need to wait for X, Y, or Z, or get to X, Y, or Z point before you give something a go. Because I waited for a very long time to do those things because I felt like I was waiting on X, Y, or Z, or circumstances X, Y, or Z, and it was damaging to me as an individual. So I'd love to encourage other people not to fall into the same trap, and that's why we are so bloody passionate about this conversation. So thank you very much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this. Rate and or review the show, share with a friend, follow us on YouTube, subscribe on YouTube, comment on YouTube, and I think that's all of the admin required. Thank you very much.
If you feel it
Right, letter. Yeah, if you'd like to. Given that Jonny is so profound, he will be the one reading it, and he will send you a haiku back. That is a personal guarantee from me.
It will be awful, but yes, I'll do it.
I didn't say it would be a good one. I said it would be a haiku. Jonny, have you got a haiku off the cuff?
No.
Oh, that's disappointing. Everyone's disappointed.
Yeah.
Goodbye.